Greetings and salutations, my name is OJ as always, and welcome back to part 6 of the DBD-a-thon, which is going to be a terrible name till the end of days. And for those that need a refresher, the DBD-a-thon is a set of videos that I am doing where I cover every single killer from Trapper all the way up to Springtrap from the hit game Dead by Daylight. I will cover their general lore, aka just reading out their bios because I'm not a lore guy, talking about their gameplay, power, teachable perks, and my favourite / least favourite cosmetics for each of those killers. And today's subject of attention is Lisa Sherwood, also known as the Hag. Now, as I start off every single one of these videos, let's start with that. I just repeated myself. We're going to read her lore bio, which reads as such. Lisa Sherwood grew up in a quiet village, mainly isolated from the rest of civilization. The people of the hamlet were kind, and the elders kept old traditions alive, often keeping the peace by personally settling the ever-rare disputes. Lisa was particularly fond of the charms they taught her to draw for safety and good fortune. One night, as she was walking home through the woods, a terrible storm struck without warning. Howling winds whipped at her hair as she stumbled through the swamp, her rain-drenched dress plastered to her skin. In the slick, wet mud she lost her footing, careening backwards and striking her head against a rock. Slipping in and out of consciousness, she strained to identify the dark shapes approaching her from between the trees. That's the last thing she could remember. Her kidnappers kept her chained to the wall in a flooded cellar. Though dimly lit, she could see others whose large open wounds swarmed with flies. It took merely a day before they returned, carving chunks from the prisoners' bodies with their rusted blades, consuming their very flesh down to the bone. Most she saw did not survive long once the cannibals targeted them, but somehow, deep within, Lisa persisted. Starved, infected, and mutilated after several weeks of torture, her gaunt arms became loose in their shackles. She pulled hard, the metal tearing through the skin and muscle until she was free. Her flesh oozed viscous yellow pus, and bones were visible beneath the gangrenous wounds. She could go no further. Delirious, she thought of home. She thought of the elders. With her dying breath, she etched the symbols they had taught her into the floor, using what remained of her fingers. Almost in response, a dark hunger stirred inside of her. It yearned for blood. In oath, she chose vengeance. The villagers' search party eventually brought them to an old shack in the swamp. Inside, its previous inhabitants had been viciously dismembered and devoured by an unidentifiable animal. In the cellar, amid rotting corpses and disconnected flesh, the elders' charms were scrawled in blood on the floor. Lisa's body was not among the bodies and was never found. The village was never the same again. Now, like a few other killers we've discussed before, such as the nurse, Hillbilly, and Rafe, her lore's relatively tragic. Or not tragic per se. No, it is tragic, yeah. You get caught up in a storm all of a sudden and suddenly you're in a basement full of cannibals. How's your chances? What luck? I'd cry myself to sleep. I wouldn't even get to sleep, would I? I'm in a basement of a cannibal. But, hey-ho. As always, I've mentioned it before, I'm not the lore guy, so if you wish to know more about her lore, I suggest looking for other content creators, if that's specifically what you're after. Otherwise, I hope you enjoy the rest of the video. Speaking of, next we move on to her gameplay / her power. Now, unlike a certain other trap-based killer, Hag starts the trial with 10 phantasm traps. Said traps can be placed down on the floor and have like this area of effect which is only visible to herself. It's shown off by this weird like flickery fire effect. Any survivor that sprints through the area where the trap is will cause a mud phantasm, aka a fake version of the Hag, to appear. It will yank the camera of the survivor who tripped the trap towards said fake version of the Hag. It also will emit... Oh my god, my voice! Why did my voice just go there? It will also emit a fake terror radius of 8 meters. The way to avoid tripping said trap is by crouching within its area of effect, or interacting with it to remove it per se. When said trap is activated, Hag has the ability to teleport to the trap, and once she teleports, she'll be facing the direction of where the survivor should be. If I remember rightly, that's how it works. Her power's actually pretty alright. It's a... I'm gonna shit on Trapper again, man. Can't believe Trapper has to go around picking off his traps and she gets all of them. And the best part about it is that once, say, like, someone triggers a trap, right, for the Hag, she gets it back. And Trapper has to go ahead and pick it up after it's been used. Terrible. I know, obviously, the actual lethality of said traps is quite different, seeing as Trapper's traps can literally just lead to a hook pretty easily, whereas Hag's ones are a bit more finicky. Hag is another killer who can sort of work very well with a hit and run playstyle, because you just set up like a web of traps everywhere, and every time someone triggers them, you just teleport to it immediately, smack them, and then cross your fingers at someone else triggers another one, and then smack them, etc. I think Hag's okay. I've never really felt very strongly about her. I think her design is pretty cool, but we'll talk about that later. Just the power is kind of okay. You put trap on the down. You put traps down, and then survivors trigger it, you teleport to them, and you can smack them. She's fun to do like jump scare stuff with, because obviously her traps in effect are basically a jump scare. She even has like an add-on that makes it so it emits like a really loud sound. Like, I think, it's actually in the article I'm reading this all off of. Yeah, Disfigured Ear, which is a very rare add-on. Survivors suffered from the deafened effect for 6 seconds. Basically make really loud noise, right? Otherwise, I think her powers are pretty okay. I do find it odd, though, that you can just kind of like place about 20 of them around a survivor who's hooked. I don't know. I never really like that, personally. You can see it from the gameplay in the background, which, as always, is my gameplay. I don't really do that. I don't like putting traps around survivors' hooked bodies, because it just... I don't know, it just feels cheap, feels scummy, and it also confuses me why she can put down a power that allows her to literally teleport to that location around a survivor's hooked body, but then someone like the artist cannot spawn a bird within 20 meters of a hook, because God forbid she does, right? That's always confused me. But anyways, with her gameplay and power relatively discussed in some sense, I suppose, we move on to her teachable perks, which I must also preface this next section. She introduced hex perks, which around the map you'll have totems, hex totems, randomly spawn around the map in some of the worst locations you will ever see. Oh my god, why do the totems spawn in the places that they do sometimes? Some of them are actually just out in the middle of Nowheresville. They're just out in the open for everyone to see. And when you use a hex perk, one of those traps around the map can randomly be lit, as in there is a actual effect on said totem. Otherwise they're dull, right? But with that prefaced again, the second time I've said that, we move on to her teachable perks. Her first teachable perk is Hex Devour Hope, with a description reading as such. A hex rooting its power on hope. The false hope of survivors ignites your hunger. Whenever a survivor is rescued from a hook while you are at least 24 meters away, Hex Devour Hope is granted a token, up to a maximum of 5. At 2 tokens, you gain a 3, 4 or 5% haste effect for 10 seconds, after 10 seconds of having hooked a survivor. At 3 tokens, all survivors are permanently exposed, meaning they can be downed in a single hit. And at 5 tokens, you are granted the ability to kill all survivors by your own hand. So basically you can mori them for free. All of the effects of the hex perk persist until its totem is cleansed or blessed. It has flavor text reading, if you do nothing, you have their blood on your hands. If you save them, her hunger grows. This perk is very, very strong, right? On a baseline level, you look at the description of it, it sounds damn near broken. If we were to take every perk in the game and we just had their base effects on paper, right? Hex Devour Hope has got to be in top 5. Because what do you mean you get a haste boost every time you move away from a hook survivor, meaning you can get to new survivors quicker? What do you mean you can one-shot down every single survivor on the map just like that? And what do you mean you can just kill them without ever having... You theoretically, right, you get enough stacks for Hex Devour Hope, you can just skip the process of hooking a single survivor. Like, if you hooked 2 dudes, they both got saved twice, and you hook someone else, you could theoretically kill a survivor without them ever having been put on the hook. Baseline, reading the description, crazy, right? Minor issue. Hex perk. Meaning, once survivors figure out, it's usually by about the 3rd token, they realise, the second someone gets downed instantly, they're like, oh god, Hex Devour Hope, oh no, we gotta get rid of that now. And usually that they do. They get rid of it relatively quickly, and then you're left without a perk slot. But in the time that it's up, insane perk. Her second perk is Hex Ruin, with a description reading as such. A hex that affects the generator repair progress of all survivors. Whenever a generator is not being repaired by a survivor, it will immediately and automatically regress its repair progress at 50, 75 or 100% of the normal regression speed, depending on the perk level. All of the effects of the hex perk persist until the totem is destroyed, with flavor text reading, "A curse is upon you, it will cause your ruin." Get it? Because it's the name of the perk. Isn't that funny? Anyways, Hex Ruin has consistently been one of the most well-known perks in the game. Back when it was really, really strong, it was an absolute menace to society and ruined a lot of survivors' lives. I'm well aware of how strong Hex Ruin used to be. I used to run it basically every single game because it was just that good. Like, you got off the gen, and I don't remember why it was so good. I think it might have been that the regression speed was like higher, like it regressed at 150%, which is, you know, pretty substantial, especially on killers who have like really good map pressure and they can force survivors off gens quite often. Like, just an example, I think Hillbilly used to really like the perk, if I'm not wrong, because he can obviously travel around the map just like that at the snap of his fingers. But now it's been nerfed reasonably. I understand why it was nerfed, and now I think it's pretty good. I've seen people like quote unquote doom post about it, saying, oh, it's over, Hex Ruin is never going to be good again, blah blah blah. But no, it's still pretty good. I mean, I think, yeah, in one of the clips in the background, I'm using Hex Ruin, and it stays around for the whole game and does apply just continuous pressure because it's always there, unless they cleanse it, of course. Once it's cleansed, no shit, it's useless again, right? But as long as it's there, they need to be aware that getting off that gen will cause it to regress. And if they get, pardon me, stuck in a chase, that generator is going to regress to a certain amount of point. Certain point. So yeah, I still think Hex Ruin is pretty good. Used to be insane, but hey ho, what can you do? It would deserve the nerf, right? Let's be honest. Let's all shake hands here. Let's all agree on this. It deserved the nerf, right? Anyways, moving on to our final perk. Said final perk being Hex, the Third Seal, with a description that reads as such. A hex that hinders the survivor's aura reading abilities. The last 2, 3, or 4 survivors you hit with a basic or special attack suffer permanently from the blindness status effect, which makes it so you can't see like auras of the killer, right? All of the effects of the hex perk persist until the totem is destroyed, and it has flavor text reading, "She touched your skin. You bear the witch's mark." This perk is bad. It just doesn't do anything. It really doesn't. Because it's also, as always, kind of luck. Well, as always, what am I saying? It's luck based. That's what I'm trying to say. It is luck based. Because you could put this perk on, and then the entire survivor team is not using an aura reading perk in any way, shape, or form. I feel like that's very unlikely. Because to my knowledge, blindness affects windows of opportunity, which I guess then that makes Hex the Third Seal a noob stomper, including myself. Like, if I got hit by Third Seal, I'd be screwed. I don't know where any of the windows are or pallets are when I play Survivor. As I've said in previous videos, I'm a killer main. I play Survivor only whenever I feel like it, or say I have a friend that wants to play with me, right? But Otherwise, I don't really think this perk is very good. It's just fine, and it's not like if this was a normal perk, right? It wasn't a hex perk. I feel like it might actually be better because it would just be efficient. Say you put like a timer on it, right? So instead of it being a hex perk, the survivor's blinded for 60, 70, or 90 seconds, something like that, right? I think the perk immediately becomes just a bit better because the fact you can get rid of the effect completely, I don't know, it doesn't really do anything. Blindness is a status effect that isn't particularly useful. Yeah, I don't really like it very much. But hey ho, what can you do? But unlike some other killers, she actually has 2 good perks, so I'm not complaining. But with all of that said about her perks, let's move on to her design as well as her cosmetics. Now, Hag's base design, I think, is like a lot. There's very few designs in this game that I don't like. I'm going to say that so you know for future reference. But again, Hag's design is really solid. I think it's a little bit weaker than the last couple characters we've talked about. I don't know why I think that, but I do. Something about, I don't know, she fits what she's going for. I can definitely see, like, going off of her lore and her being malnourished, starved, cannibals, blah blah blah, she definitely fits the bill, right? Very scrawny, very skinny, very bony, and I think a cool part of her design is that you can still see the humanity. Like, you can tell that at some point this was a human being, this was a person like you or me, mostly from the fact that she still has a relatively human looking face / head, and the fact that she has like tattered clothing on her body, which presumably was the clothes that she was wearing when she was taken. Though I do have to wonder, where the hell did she get that giant, like, claw hand thing? I don't think they ever mentioned that, especially considering she's malnourished. I have no idea where that claw hand comes from. But, hey-ho. And besides that, I don't really have too much to say on the Hag's base design. I think it's pretty solid. I'm still confused on why she has a giant claw, and I like the fact that you can vaguely see the humanity still left within her, even if she is, by all accounts, completely gone. At least, that's what I think. I think she's completely gone. Who knows? There might be a lore drop that I don't know about. Hey ho. As always, I'm not a lore fella. But with all that said, we can move on to her cosmetics. Now, as if anyone needs a refresher, when it comes to cosmetics and how I decide what is my least and most favourite, for least favourites, I am not allowed to go below very rares, because if I could, I would just say, wow, this brown rarity recolor is really, really bad. It just makes her red, which is boring. That's a boring thing to do because, yeah, no shit, the terrible brown recolor being sold for a single £1 is going to be her worst skin, right? So when it comes to worst skins, I limit myself to very rares or above. And when it comes to favourite skins, I pick whatever the hell I want because, as always, taste is subjective, and what I think is my favourite, even if said favourite just so happens to be like a legendary or a visceral skin. Though Hag does not have a legendary or a visceral, if I remember rightly. I literally just went and got footage for this. Why am I questioning myself? She doesn't. But with that said, let's talk about my least favourite skin. That being Queen of the Maya. This skin sucks. It's so bad. It doesn't change a thing about her design at all. Her hair is slightly more kempt per se. Doesn't look like wooden twigs. It's like actual hair, right? Her claw has some golden rings on it. Woo! She's wearing a golden dress instead of the tattered green one. Woo! It looks like a base design. In a bad way. It doesn't look like they've changed anything at all. She literally has like a blue rarity skin, like just a normal rare that is so much better than this. That's the one with like the double faces. That one looks like a very rare. This looks like it looks bad. It looks bad. It doesn't really change anything at all. It doesn't. It's just, I don't like it. It doesn't do anything. It literally put her in a brownish yellowy dress, put some golden rings on her hand and called it a day. How is this a very rare, especially when compared to her other very rares? besides like that Mud Queen one. I don't remember what the name of that one is, like Mud Serpent or whatever. And her blue rarities are better than this. Her rares, her normal rares look better than this. Insane how bad this skin is. And I can't believe they recolored it and made her pasty ass white. What do you mean that's a battle pass worthy skin? What? Anyways, with my little rant over, move on to my favourites. But before we move on to my favourites, I'm going to give some honourable mentions, those two being the Birch Witch skin, which is inspired by the Crypt TV creature of the same name. I actually know it's a collaboration. Why am I saying it's inspired? Anyways. And the Swamp Creature skin. By the way, Swamp Creature, awesome. Birch Witch as well, really, really awesome. I forgot to say that. Birch Witch, really, really cool. But Swamp Creature, incredible, because it completely redesigns her character to be something completely different, yet still weirdly fitting and very cool. But these are honorable mentions for a reason, and that's because my actual favorite skin is Toxic Roots. Whoa, this skin, incredible, unbelievable. I don't know why it took them so long to think up the idea of taking Hag, who has a lot of like nature themes to her, because obviously she's like a swamp witch, a hag, etc., right? And taking the plant theming around her and the swampiness and all of that, and making it alien, making her into an alien plant. Genius. In just on a conceptual level, great. Thank God they finally did it. I say finally. I've been waiting for a skin like this for ages. So when it actually came out, I don't remember when it came out, but when it did come out, wow, I was mind blown, and it could not look cooler. The head being like a weird, exotic, it looks a bit like a, you know, like the type of plants like Venus flytraps, that weird plant that like drowns its prey. Those plants, it kind of look like the top of her head kind of looks like that. The bioluminescence of her like face, like the weird thing on her face, as well as the heart section being split open and having these red tendrils sticking out. Awesome. Even the hand looks cool with the extra twigs and bones peeking out of the wrist and forearm. It just looks it looks fantastic. I really, really, really love the alien plant aesthetic. It could not be happier with how it turned out when it finally did come out. But with all of that said, we are at the conclusion of this video once again. And yeah, I like the Hag. Never felt super strongly about her. Think she's pretty neat, and she's one of the originals per se, at least for someone like me who played on the Xbox version of it, because she was obviously free. I didn't have to pay a penny for her. Yeah, I think she's pretty neat. I got no qualms with her, but she's certainly not in my favorites, right? But with all of that said, I hope you have a good evening, morning, afternoon, etc. And I hope you've enjoyed the DBD-a-thon thus far. Our next stop will be on one of my personal favourite killers and one of my original mains, that being the Doctor.
Ah!